I'm Dr. Kerry McInerney. Dr. Eleanor Drage and I are the hosts of the Good Robot podcast. Join us as we ask the experts, what is good technology? Is it even possible? And how can feminism help us work towards it? If you want to learn more about today's topic, head over to our website, www.thegoodrobot.co.uk, where we've got a full transcript of the episode and a specially curated reading list by every guest. We love hearing from listeners, so feel free to tweet or email us, and would also so appreciate you leaving us a review on the podcast app. But until then, sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode.
In this episode, Kerry and I go shopping with artist and performer Laura Allcorn. We enter into her practice, which is called the Institute for Comedic Inquiry, to learn how she pairs humour and entertainment with participatory public engagement methods to raise awareness about bizarre and dangerous uses of AI. Her performances serve back to audiences the things that are strange and absurd about what algorithms know about you. Stay tuned to find out why Kerry uses face masks for self-care and why the algorithms say that I'm grumpy. We hope you enjoy the show.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today, Laura. So just to kick us off, could you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what's brought you to thinking about good technology?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Thrilled to be chatting with you both. I'm Laura Allcorn, and I'm an artist and performer. And I create participatory installations and performances that draw audiences into thinking about emerging technology. And my practice is called the Institute for Comedic Inquiry, and that's very intentional. It's my experimental research institute to study how humor can be paired with participatory public engagement methods. And I do that because I feel like as adults, we don't get a lot of opportunities to engage with science outside of doing a podcast like we are, which is very important for disseminating information. But I'm really curious about inviting audiences to process these topics live and in person and through their own bodies and with others. And so that's why I create these larger scale participatory performances and installations. And I can give you maybe a couple examples because I think it's hard to imagine what is that? What would that be? And last year I made a game show about AI authored emails called Who Wants to Write an Email? So contestants live from the audience were recruited to take the hot seat and to try and figure out human from AI writing in an email and talk to an AI expert on stage, use their lifelines, like talking to the audience. So that's like a larger theatrical performance that uses audience participation. And then I've done a 90-minute workout program that trains you how to thwart surveillance technologies that can track your unique walk, which I didn't know was possible. So I thought, why maybe we could come up with a way to train for that and imagine a future where it's part of our routine, where we start to imagine altering our walk, walking strangely to subvert this. And it raises all these ethical questions about who controls these technologies, what do we want from them, how are they being used, and if we get an opportunity to opt out, what does that look like? And more projects like that, I think we're going to talk about later.
So can you help us answer our 3 good robot questions? What is good technology? Is it even possible? And how can pro-justice work help us get there?
I answered this question at first in my mind because I knew you were going to ask it. And then I got into a real debate over the last week thinking about it. Is good technology possible? I hope so. I'm optimistic, but I think good's a tricky word because I think good technology means something different to many different audiences or different people. So I think it's sort of case by case. And what I think would be an improvement is just an improvement in the process of how technology is made. So currently, a lot of it is designed by private companies, and we're not really given a lot of transparency into how these things work, what the goals for them are, what is the real ambition behind them. And we don't sort of get to choose what they're aimed at. So a big part of doing a game show about AI and email was me satirizing this idea that this is what we're applying AI technology to. This seems absurd to me, that we have so many other larger societal challenges and that we've decided that embedding this in our email is going to be the biggest investment of our use of this technology and knowing how much power and server time and all these things it takes, like those things are pushed out of the equation. So I think if we could alter the development process, we could alter regulatory processes. If we could give the public more opportunities to be informed about these things, obviously we want to weigh in, but I don't know. I don't know how much we can move the needle. And I can't answer if that can all happen, but I'm still aspiring towards it or working in some sort of humorous resistance around it or just trying to become a savvy, educated citizen myself of these technologies.
I really like the fact that what you're doing is using the idea of the provocation, and the idea of the good robot is very much a provocation rather than some kind of utopian pipe dream. But I think we'll draw that out in the next question, which is about humor and entertainment and leisure and the role that this plays in getting people to think about good technology. Because entertainment is nothing if not a series of sort of provocations to the audience, whether it's a game show or whether it's some of my favorite comedians who manage to be provocative in just the right way. And whatever you think is just the right way very much depends on who you are and the kinds of provocations that you think are acceptable and not. So yes, tell us about entertainment and leisure and humor in your practice.
Absolutely. Yeah. This might be annoying, but I like to remind people how incredible it is that we've evolved to have a sense of humor because we're constantly encountering new information. Things confound us. The world is complex and confusing. And so we have a sense of humor because we can laugh, we can have pleasure in exploring those new ways of thinking. We can literally change our perspectives. And so some people like myself are just a little more biased. Like I think humorously, I look at the world that way. That's just, I can't stop that. But I think humor serves to tackle topics where we think they are boring, they're complex, they're challenging. And I think we need an extra layer of humor to break that barrier down and to imagine encountering and holding another idea in our minds. And so that's when I think humor is really at its best and when it should be applied is to those sorts of topics that are a bit touchy, tricky. That's when we really need humor to crack that window open for us. So I use it that way. And then I think, again, back to this idea of maybe framing this, because I love stand-up comedy as well. That's a comedy of speaking. And obviously, a lot of popular comedy is about speaking from personal perspective or from something you've experienced in the world and making commentary on it and hopefully helping the audience feel like they're not alone. They're not, this isn't just happening to them. But when we're talking about larger ideas about speculative technologies or how technologies might shape us, I have landed on pushing past just a spoken word medium or written medium and moving into this idea of bringing the audience into a state of play. And this is a bit of a high wire act, and I've tried a lot of different methods for this, and I found some that have been successful. And it really depends on the subject matter. So I start from the actual question or provocation that I have in mind, and I say, what would happen if this played out? What would happen to society? What would be the new social rules of this world if this technology came into play? And what will we have to then negotiate as a society? And then I try and insert the audience into this situation, into this scenario, and I ask them to play themselves. You don't need to play any other part. You just need to bring yourself and your own interests, your own personal experiences, whether you've even touched this technology before. It doesn't really matter. You can find an analogy to something in your life and you can share that with everybody else who's participating. And you can start from your own questions. And what often happens with other passive or more consumable mediums is that we're invited to just sort of take it in. And maybe we didn't get that first question we had answered. So now we're stuck and we can't progress. So what I'm looking to do is bring people into a process of sense making. And if we can get past that, we can start thinking critically. And then if we can get past thinking critically, maybe we can think more aspirationally. We can start to imagine alternatives. We can start to put this technology on our own personal terms and conditions. I like to jokingly say that because we forget we get to do that too.
Yes, absolutely. That was phenomenal. And I remember encountering your work and seeing this photograph of people stumbling around the streets in New York with silver plastic fringe hanging off them, having the best time ever, and thinking, yes, that's the way of telling people about gait surveillance and what it does. And then I read a load of paper on gait surveillance and was mortified by the lack of consistency and results, even results published by people who are defining their own metrics. So just incredible work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting to hear about your work as like sense making as well, in a way, and like it's very embodied. I remember when Everything Everywhere All at Once came out, the science fiction film, that being not only, I think, like really important to a lot of like Asian American, Asian diaspora communities because of the fact that it was this kind of all Asian fronted, Asian told sci-fi film, which often are quite rare, but also because it was hilarious. And there's so many of the stories we tell are often these like very narrow stories about migration and trauma, and those stories are incredibly important, but they're also the only ones that get funded and get space to be told. And to having this totally absurd film that was being shared about Asian American experiences, I think was really wonderful. But I remember a common critique of the film was that it's a sensory overload. Like people would say, this is completely overwhelming. And it's a lot. Like it's undeniably a lot to watch that film. I definitely had to pause it multiple times because, yeah, okay, good. I'm glad it wasn't just me because I was like, I could take a lot of chaos. Eleanor calls me the number one violator of the open office policy because if someone's disturbing the peace, it is usually me. But even I was like, if I think this is too much, how do other people handle this? But I wonder if there was actually something deliberate in that sensory overload, that it was about trying to like provoke the imagination or kind of crack open your mind and make you think differently, which is such a central theme to that film. So that's already made me think a little bit differently about that. So thank you. So we are on to this next stage where usually Ellen and I are like the hosts. We're sort of in control of what the episode looks like. But in honor of Laura's appearance, we are handing over all control. We're going to actually now go through one of your incredibly exciting artistic projects. It's normally an installation called SKU-MARKET. So Laura, take it away.
Right. So normally this piece is staged in a gallery setting or a festival, something like that. And if you were to encounter it, you would see a mini market. It's blue. It's got interesting packaging. There's 40 products on the shelves. And the market says, at SKU, we know you. So the promise as you approach this is you find out how to get onto the web app to start shopping. And it's an invitation for you to see what SKU thinks of you. And the project is about the idea of these algorithms that start to build a social profile of us. And we all have a digital social profile, maybe many of them floating out there. We can never see them. We don't know what is in them, but we do know that we're servicing ads to us. They're in our feeds, in our scrolls. They're even sometimes pushing beyond. They're offering us different services, or maybe they're qualifying us for our health insurance or our car insurance. There's ways that these profiles are actually making real change potentially in your life, and you might not be savvy about them. So I partnered with Dr. Jennifer Edmond, who's a professor of digital humanities at Trinity College Dublin. And this was a residency project with Science Gallery Dublin's Bias exhibition. So we were paired up in this kind of interesting residency program, artists and researchers. And our project was to make this mini market and to be able to profile all these different audience members and show them a peek behind the curtain of what would an algorithm really look like. And can you see your profile mirrored back to you? And so the whole idea is that as you're shopping the market, like what is going through your mind? Is this a moment of reflection for you? Are you making different choices knowing that an algorithm is going to profile you based on what you bought? Because this is what's happening. It's very strange to think that like we are what we buy, and that our purchasing decisions, let alone our media decisions or our use of social media, is also informing this. And it's this huge like surveillance capitalism apparatus that we can't ever get our minds around. I still can't. And even working on this project, what you probably did is I gave them each a workaround so that they could shop from home on this occasion, so we could see what their SKU-MARKET profiles are. And if you get onto the web app, it's just very simple. You can buy 5 products and SKU will tell you who you are. And you get a digital receipt at the end. So maybe if Eleanor and Carrie, if one of you wants to start and just take us through your shopping process and what you bought, and then maybe we can read your profile and talk about it.
Sure. I'm really embarrassed by what it says about me. And I don't think I actually really considered that what I bought would then turn into some kind of personal statement. I think that's probably the same online. Carrie and I share an Amazon Prime account. And
I did once look at Eleanor's purchases. I did once text her being like, that's a lot of candles. I'm not trying to be surveillant because I know that's weird, but I was like, do you really love candles? I think you were in a candle phase because it was like outstanding number of candles.
She then sent me all these memes of Dracula surrounded by candles in the vampire den. And that's genuinely how I live. I've got like a variety of different candlesticks and stuff. And yeah, it's embarrassing.
All personal surveillance capitalist here. Yeah.
I do exactly right here. Yeah. And I like the candles to be red. They have like the tool. Anyway, whatever. It's all really embarrassing. This is worse though. The 5 things I bought were bacon fries. Sounds delicious. Football jersey. Quite into the like sports core thing at the moment. An all-in-one non-stick pan because they are the best. A cute cat subscription video because I'm a cat mom even though I don't have a cat. I spent all my time watching cat videos. And then brain power dust because I never have enough of my own.
Let's hear who you are.
Your belief in the power of aesthetics guides your decision making. I spend a lot of time buying stuff online. You are highly grumpy, somewhat passive aggressive, but also dramatic and ambitious. You have a low tolerance for pain, which you deal with using protein powder, relationship drama, and a no-nonsense ponytail. You might also like predictability, lint rollers, and codependency. You remember the stresses of writing the perfect instant messenger away message. If it were possible to actually have 2.4 children, you would be the person to do it. Carrie, what do you think? Highly grumpy, passive-aggressive, dramatic, ambitious.
This is very unflattering. Just, I can safely say Eleanor is lovely. I feel highly grumpy is a wonderful combination of words because I don't think of grumpy as something that you like fluctuate in. I think of it as like a state grumpy. I feel like you're dramatic. I feel like you live the highs and lows of life. I don't feel like you're passive aggressive. Like, I feel like you really own and experience your feelings, which is a beautiful thing. I don't know how that corresponds to bacon fries.
So maybe it helps to say that on the back of the installation, you're shopping on the front of it and you walk behind it and it's dark and shadowy. And this is like the underbelly of the SKU-MARKET operation. And our idea was to pull up this curtain on what's going on. So your question there about what is causing this, right? What are the attributes associated with bacon fries that would determine that you're, I don't know, highly grumpy or passive aggressive or something like that, which we know that you aren't. So you can see each item coming on to the screen and it's showing your likes, your behaviors, your interests. It's calculating and retabulating all of these in small data visualizations, and every product that you buy then refactors that profile for you. So they really are unique to each person. It depends on what order you made your purchases in. It depends on the exact items. There's a lot of variables that come into play on how the profile is calculated. And I should say, this is an artificial intelligence. We didn't have the funding at the time to actually build this giant apparatus, but what we did do is we built it more in line like a relational database. So it does have many different options, and every profile is unique based on so many different factors. But you can see this all sort of recalculating, and then obviously your profile gets locked in the system forever, and then that's it. You can never change it. You can never go back. And that's part of another point of conversation around these things is, would you like to have more control of this profile that was just written about you? Did you even want to see it, really? Do you really want to know what it says? What kind of psychoanalysis is this? It's really agnostic. It's based on your purchases. But a lot of these companies were, like there was a running joke that I thought was really absurd, which was like a lot of these technology companies were claiming to know us better than we know ourselves. And that's the central joke of this project. So that's bizarre.
I was going to say, it reminds me of 3 things. One is like the Soviet era. You bought the wrong soap at the supermarket and they've taken you in for questioning. And then the second one is the Cambridge Analytica stuff, deciding whether people are going to vote in a certain direction and trying to manipulate the way that people are voting depending on what adverts they're seeing on social media. And then also, Kerry and I did a study of recruitment tools that claim to be able to identify your personality from looking at your face. And these tools, we debunked in a number of ways. Firstly, I worked with some second-year computer scientists at Cambridge that replicated one of these tools, and they showed that if you change the brightness, the lighting, and the saturation of the image, that changes your personality score. And what we were trying to do is show that it's not an AI system looking at you and acting as some kind of lie detector test, an omniscient force. Instead, it's to do with the way that the data is labeled by people, and therefore it is the perception of personality that is automated.
But before we go into me quickly, actually, Eleanor, I was wondering, to what extent did you look at your receipt and think, oh, this is or isn't reflective of me? And then did you have second thoughts? Because I looked at mine and was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, but am I like this? And it does affect, I think, you psychologically whenever you do any of these silly like BuzzFeed quizzes that tell you which Disney character you are or anything else, that you do start to retrofit your own characteristics and behaviors.
Oh yeah, strong horoscope vibes.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating to imagine. I don't know if you all notice this, but I hear people casually saying things like, my algorithm. I can't believe what my algorithm showed me. This is common vernacular. This is part of the fabric of our everyday lives. Or I know people who try and subvert them, or that's a game that they play, that they are trying to upend what they're getting, or they want to get strange things. They don't want the algorithm to know them. And some people do want the algorithm to know them because they love that idea of feeling seen or feeling catered to. And I think it's to each their own, but I think it's about questioning what it's serving back to you, and then exactly what you're asking, which is, how does that affect? That actually does affect me. That shapes me. That shapes my thinking. That shapes possibly what I'm doing, what I'm looking at, my behavior. I start to get a reinforcement of something in myself. It's really pervasive, and I think that should be challenged.
And you're right that there's so much humor that can be generated around this. I ended up on a North Korean propaganda Instagram page last night, and the comments underneath were so funny. People are hilarious. Where they're responding, this is what my algorithm brought me. What have I done?
Yeah.
What does this say about me? Or I listened to something, I had a breakup, listened to some really bad music for a week, and now I'm only getting this kind of rubbish on my Spotify. It's a source of great amusement, I think, for people at the moment.
But gives me hope that people have found the levity in it, right? Like, we're savvy to it now. We're interested. We're like reclaiming it in some interesting way.
The German novel Quality Land, because this is exactly what your project reminded me of when I first was told about it by Eleanor, which is, it's a novel. It was written in German, only translated into English, I think, in 2020. But it follows the travails of this man who's living in this kind of like future world where everything is dominated by a company, I think, called Quality Land. But I haven't read it, so apologies if that's wrong. Like an Amazon knockoff. And this man gets sent this pink dolphin-shaped dildo by Quality Land, because the whole thing about Quality Land is, we anticipate your desires, we send you what you want. And he gets sent this pink dolphin dildo, and he's like, no, this is not me. This is not who I am. I don't want this dildo. And the whole story is just him trying to return this dildo with increasing levels of absurdity. And then I think the final part is he finally manages to return it, and he goes home, and the next day, they've just sent him another dolphin dildo. And so the story just starts all over again. So I was quite excited. Yeah, I think it's really relevant, but I was quite excited. I was like, is this going to be my Quality Land? And the way that do SKU-MARKET, my pink dolphin dildo equivalent.
Should we hear it?
So the first one is I got the Hydrate and Glow face mask because, as Eleanor knows, I love some skincare. Trainers, I'm a big investive footwear person. Houseplant, this is for my husband. We have so many plants in our house, we actually can't physically fit more. And then the next two are very self-care-y, but my kind of self-care is just involves like eating and drinking instead of doing exercise or being mindful. So it's smoky sea salt chocolate and rosé wine. And so I got my list, and then I was like, should I go back and change it so I sound more exciting? And then I was like, no, do it with the spirit of the experiment. But again, that kind of like thinking about how is this going to affect my profile is very true to the art project. And also true to the art project, I'm also taking this interview while drinking a kombucha from M&S. So I was like, I'm really not doing myself any favors on this shopping list.
Okay, so that's interesting. You did start to debate your purchases. Did you replace anything in your cart? Because you can do that.
I strongly considered adding in world building game because I also love like cozy gaming. And then I thought about doing that. But then I was like, no, just accept that everything I like is stuff that you can eat and just do while sitting in a chair at home, which is reasonably accurate, to be fair. So I stuck with the list.
Yeah, in doing this project, there's another like meta layer to this, which is you can observe the different types of SKU shoppers, like people like you who are just like, I'm just going to shop and that's it. And that's all I want to do with it. But then there's some people who get really into it and they keep shuffling things in their cart. And so, yeah, that tells me a little bit about how they're engaging with the content too. But I'm curious to hear yours.
Yes, I also considered doing it multiple times and comparing them, but I was like, no, like, don't over interfere. So mine was, you sure know how to cultivate beauty in your surroundings. You are highly indulgent, somewhat chill, but also honorable and smarmy. You have a weakness for wellness products, which you deal with using notions, deep empathy, and student loan debt. You might also like sheepskin, draped over chairs, escapism, and baths. You don't care to be labeled and are comfortable with fluidity and constant change. You are a live in the moment, get what you want kind of person. Eleanor, how accurate is my skewer receipt?
How come hers is so nice and mine is so bad? I think a lot of that stuff is very true. You are highly empathetic. Kerry's desk space at work is like the inside of a home, and everyone else's is pretty blank. It's an office full of very serious philosophers, and then Kerry has like a mirror to practice different kinds of extraordinary eyeshadow looks in the middle of the day while she's also thinking about something extremely serious. And then lots of different like posters. She's also hung stuff up on the wall, which I'm not necessarily sure is like legal within the office space, but she's so respected by our boss that I guess she's let do what she wants. So a lot of that does ring true.
Oh, you picked out the very nice bits. But yes, no, I thought schmarmy is such a distinctive word that I was like, oh, if I don't like that I see myself in that word, but I also appreciate the specificity of that diction. I was like, I do feel somewhat smarmy. But yet the bit I thought Eleanor would laugh at was you're a live in the moment type of person, as Eleanor knows from when I sent her an agenda for our very casual chat. I was like,
You do send an agenda.
I'm like, let's meet whenever we're free. Each thing that we have to do together, she sends me like particular meeting block.
I sent like a Google Calendar link, but the calendar link is catch up, and the first 2 minutes is like recap holidays.
I also have a friend who does the same thing, so it's very much within my remit of organized friendship. So will you tell us a little bit more about Kerry?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, so I'd be really interested then, what were people's responses like when you watch them in the installations? You've mentioned that like one thing is that you saw people engaging with it in very different ways, but like, did you think that it kind of prompted these reflections on like algorithmic behavior, algorithmic culture? Yeah, like what do you think people carried away with them?
Yeah, I think it's similar to the experience that we just tried to simulate here. A lot of friends were shopping the market together and would do this same interaction, which is, you know me, is this really like me? Holding this mirror back up to themselves from someone they trusted in their lives. So I think, again, this is framed, you're entering into an exhibition that's about bias. So you're already a bit primed to be looking at the works that are on display in that regard. So when people were shopping, these same questions that we set up the project with, people come to their own conclusions around. Like they just walk into a gallery space and they see hopefully an appealing mini market. And the thing says it'll tell them who they are. And that's an appealing thing to people, like to be mirrored back, to be shown this. And as the project unfolds, and I'm sure you saw, like, as you're shopping on the app, it's really about this process. And to me, it's about having activity where you get to feed into the system and every audience member is given some level of agency. So then that lets each person approach the project in whatever way they want. So we had people who actually designed these systems, shopping SKU-MARKET, and then they would walk around the back and they go, yeah, pretty good. And I was like, that's disturbing. I guess that's the highest compliment, which is that we can't really know exactly all of the parameters that are being used to gauge these things. And of course, we're building this database with words like smarmy, with words like grumpy, with these things that we thought would hook people into thinking like, oh, that's a bizarre and specific thing to know about me. And that's part of the comedy. That's the idea, is to keep like serving back this thing that's so strange and absurd. in order to get you to ask these questions. Like, does it have a profile on me? How many profiles on me exist? How are they making them? Wait, it's locked in the system? I would like to change it. I don't want this floating around about me. I don't want this informing what I'm doing. So I think those are the main questions that come up. And again, each person comes at it differently. That some people like perpetually shop. They shopped multiple times. They wanted to see how, and that's them. That's exciting to me. That's not like the algorithm isn't working. The algorithm is the project's working. So that means they wanted to see if they could figure out what it was doing. Can they buy something completely different and be someone else? Of course they can. That's the way that it works. So I think that's all part of what it means to make an artwork like this. This is as far as it can go, right? This is as far as it can do. Its work is to frame the questions, and it can invite you to participate in answering them for yourselves. And in some festivals and in some conditions, like there's a mediator there that can support you in that questioning. The hope is that any audience member, anybody approaching this, can be surfaced with those questions and at least walk away with some understanding that, like, wow, there is a whole system developing these profiles. That's pretty big. Like a lot of people in the general public hadn't even come around to that when this project first came out. So this was news to them, which, for people like us who study these things or who are interested in trying to learn about them, that's not news, but for some people it is. And so you have to imagine the spectrum of people coming at these sorts of projects, and people who were savvy were then picking it apart from a different perspective.
Getting people to ask the question is the first step. And it's also something that needs to be done iteratively. So this is just the most important thing that you could do. And getting people to access the right questions via humor is really priceless. So thank you so much for your work and for coming on today to speak about it with us.
Oh, it was an absolute pleasure. Love speaking with you. Looking forward to more.
This episode was made possible thanks to the generosity of Christina Gore and the MacArthur Foundation. It was produced by Eleanor Drage and Kerry McInerney and edited by Eleanor Drage.